put it on those others. So hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Today, I am really honored to have Robyn McTague here. She is a master holistic healer, a best-selling author, and she has started her own type of coaching. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Robyn, and your coaching practice and your story?
Certainly. Thank you for having me, first of all, and hello to everyone. So what happened for me is now 21 years ago this year, I had breast cancer, and I was kind of going one way in my life, and that involved looking at being a union president. We hadn't had any females in that role. And so a lot of people thought I would be really good at that because I had a background in psychology, counseling, conflict resolution, all these other things. And out of my mouth came, no, I'm going to be a healer. And I kind of looked around like, who said that? And so that kind of shifted my life. So I became more independent, really dealt with a lot of emotional stuckness that had happened in my growing up life. So a lot of trauma. And then it was time to really deal with that, dealing with the cancer. And it's like, how did I get here? What do I want my life to be like? And so really shifted that. And so I learned a system where you get grounding and shielding and raise your vibration. So it really helped me to grow and to be able to keep myself separate and my emotions separate from other people. So I wasn't taking that all on. So it gave me that ability to go within and find my answers and not be, like all of us empaths figuring out, is that my feelings or someone else's? And so then I finished working corporately and then just added other systems, the motivational map, which is the only system out there to help us to see why we do what we do. And then the Enneagram, it's partially based on that. So I took a really deep dive with that. And it helps us to see the lens of the world that we look through, and then a transformational process psychologically and spiritually to find that core essence of who we are so we can be our best spiritual self. And I add in a bunch of other energy systems, including numerology, thought field therapy. I trained with Roger Callahan, who started the original tapping sequences.
Okay.
And yeah, so it was one of his students that started EFT. Some people may be aware of that. And yeah, I just love how when we're open to looking at our life fully, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, then we can have that growth and really shift how we see the world, how we interact in the world, our relationships, and stop the compartmentalization that we kind of grow up thinking, work is here and family life is here. And as we move into self-actualization, then it's like we incorporate all parts of ourself. And so we do some really deep work on the shadow, things that we put to the side that we don't want to look at, and integrate that into our lives, inner child work, and different ways to really incorporate that so we can live our best lives and have that freedom and choice. And so that's why I called it a life of choice, because that's ultimately what we want. And sometimes we get stuck in thinking it's either or. And often there's a third or fourth or different option that we can't see for ourselves. And that's why it's so important to be working with someone who can give you that perspective. And we can get so insular, and especially now with COVID, where a lot of us are on our own a lot of time, there's a lot of grief that we haven't been processing. And so that's one of the first areas I often look with people is, what's going on for you in that area, because it brings up all those past areas that we haven't really addressed, because we forget it's not linear, right? We think, okay, I've had enough time and all of that, but it's really not true. We can, anniversaries, different things, relationships, feeling the loss of our freedom of relationships with other people, how we interact, all of those things. So for example, with the motivational map, if you are very relational based, this is one of the areas that is important to look at. So if you are in a job that you don't really care about the job, but you love the people, then you can stay in a job too long. Or if the people that you love leave, then you may leave the job, even though that might be your best career option to move along. And then we have the more growth people, which I find a lot of entrepreneurs are. And it's like the shiny object syndrome and always looking to the future and not looking at what do I need to achieve right now. So we need to create that balance and just the ability to reframe it and see how can I incorporate some of those areas, because if I'm so focused on one thing, then there's something else that I'm not paying attention to in my life.
Right. Well, and I think you hit so many. I was all like, wow. First of all, you have such a rich background with a variety of different tools that you can bring into the mix. And second of all, I love the fact that you look at things from a holistic perspective, because I really feel like for a long time, up until recently, everything was compartmentalized, like you said. So work was supposed to be in the work box, family was supposed to be in the family box, health was supposed to be in the health box. And then as we're allowing ourselves to process things a lot more realistically and a lot more fully, and with different tools like this, we do see that there's so much overlap between our lives and everything that's included in our lives, basically. So it's all one and the same. And you mentioned grief, and that is a brilliant, connection with what we're going through right now, and something I think a lot of people are resisting right now is just and we haven't been taught to do that as a society. We haven't been taught to fully grieve. We haven't been taught about transformative processes. So it's really, aside from the fact that we're social creatures and a lot of us don't have the socialization that we really need, there is a big grieving process that has been completely overlooked by, from top to bottom.
Absolutely. And anger too, right? There's
Yeah.
anger underneath there's sadness, all these things. And we're not taught how to process it in a healthy way. And so what we do is we express it in unhealthy ways. So, people with road rage, for example, it brings up past injustices that they feel that have happened. And maybe the person's just trying to get into the mix of the traffic, or we don't know what's going on for that person. So one of the key things for me that I learned in conflict resolution was be curious. All behavior makes sense. So to that person, it does. So how can we be open enough to listen and to find out what's going on for them? Because then we can have that shift to more kindness and compassion. And really that, to me, is what everything comes back to, is finding that kindness and compassion for ourselves. Often we can do it for others, but how do we do that for ourselves and see, this is not what I wanted. Taking on responsibility at a young age, like for myself, my mom was suicidal. And first time I remember that, I was 4 years old. So she really relied on me in a lot of ways. So, that affected a lot of things in my life, and I became overly responsible, and I had to come back to how do I take care of myself and break down that word to response ability. How can I respond to what I need, and what is my ability to respond in this moment, rather than, oh yes, I'll do it and I'll help you, and forgetting about myself.
Right. Well, and two, having to take on so much responsibility as a 4-year-old is incredible. You should be being taken care of at that point in time in life, and to have to be responsible for yourself and probably for somebody else's well-being is quite the burden for a 4-year-old. And yeah. And you also brought up empathy as, it's kind of one of those things where we're learning right now. I think a lot of people aren't really aware of how much of somebody else's energy and mood they will take on. And they don't learn how to dissect. You probably had a hard time pulling your own self, your independent self, out of the relationship area that you had in your home. And probably looking back, that's probably why you learned so many tools and made it your life's purpose to help other people, because you had such a rich experience with needing to gauge other people's emotions, needing to kind of feel into what they were feeling so that you could respond to the energy that was there.
Absolutely, right? I had to survive, so it was like these are the people that I don't know what they're going to do. My dad was rageaholic, alcoholic, so very unpredictable. And then when my mom and I left, we moved around a lot, so lived with other families. So I was constantly being that chameleon, like, how do I fit in? How do I gauge what's going on? But it also made me curious and think, why do people do what they do? How can they be so mean or cruel or, uncaring, whatever it is? And for whatever reason, I always had that curiosity, even though it would get me in trouble sometime as a kid, questioning religion, for example. Like, I was doing that at such a young age. So I just had this ability to be able to look at that and want to find the positive in things. And for whatever reason, so I'm really grateful for whatever that was in me that kept me going and allowed me to move beyond the circumstances. And that's really what I feel is we need that hope. This is what people need right now, is that hope that it can be different. Like, I did the breast cancer support for 20 years till they cut the program last year. And that was the biggest thing for people to say, oh, wow, you've been 20 years post-cancer, there's hope for me.
Right.
So this is what we need to really see, that circumstances are temporary. We have choice and we can reframe it to something different. And how can I still feel the feelings and take care of ourselves with, self-care and love, and whether we need to cry or use a Nerf bat to get some of the energy out, or, walking, running, whatever it is for you, we need to feel it in our body and let the stuff move through. But there's that place of, yeah, this is temporary. My freedoms might be feeling restricted, and I'm doing it for the greater good. There are people I love that are going to be protected and safe through this. I'm being protected and safe. And I can start to plan, though I need to build in more flexibility, right? We all have need for control. And so what can I do to feel in control? Because we can only control ourselves and our immediate surroundings. Just tidying up, feeling like we're creating space. There's lots of things that we can do to just look at it in that different perspective. And that's the thing I find with relationships. So often we're attempting to have a specific type of relationship, and we're not the only ones in it. We all have free will, so we can only do what we can do. And being able to say, it may not be for life. Maybe I have to shift some of the things in a particular relationships. Maybe I need to let go of some things. I think this is one of the gifts of the last year, is helping us to look at what is my life like, and what do I maybe need to change or consider changing or looking deeper into. And so if we can look at the gift and that hope for a better life for ourselves, then I think, that's the best thing we can do in the circumstances that we're in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's almost like to the point where I felt like, okay, first of all, oh, somebody wrote in, in Thai. I don't.
I don't speak Thai, so I don't know.
Yeah, me neither. So, but it was like this huge major reset. I think for a lot of people, I mean, I understand that there is the wide spectrum of experience with the past year, and for me personally, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I can breathe. Coronavirus is about the breath. I can breathe, and then it was about me choosing what my priorities were and really starting to focus on, okay, am I spending too much time on social media? Am I spending too much time on my business instead of being with my family? Which I still do sometimes. I'm totally, the serial entrepreneur. But like you said, it's choices. And we have these choices from moment to moment almost. It's not only the big major choices, but it's the minute to minute choices that really make a difference in how our lives are.
Absolutely. And we need to bring in that nurturing for ourselves and all of those things. And how can one of the tools that you can use is, I don't know if you've heard of the Kaizen question, Kaizen. And it's a way to ask yourself every day before you go to bed. It's like, what can I do better today? Or how did I do better in a specific area? Maybe it's, my work or my family life or whatever it is. And then it's like, I can see that I could improve that by doing this and then acting on that. So that's one of the tools, depending on your motivators, that can be helpful to just have that review and have the gratitude, like you said. The gratitude it shifts our vibration, right? And that's what we need to do, is have that shift. And the faster we can do it, the more beneficial. Yes, have the feelings, work through it, have it move through, but then shift to what am I grateful for instead of being the victim. Because when we fall into the victim, we don't feel like we have choice. So where am I feeling powerless in my life? And that was a big one for me to work through, because my mom used that a lot. So that was kind of normal in my life to feel like the victim. And when you go deeper and deeper, you can see it even in little subtle ways. But the thing is, we find it faster and faster. So we get through it faster and faster.
Right, right. And you said that was the Kanzen, Kanze.
Kaizen, or Z, I guess, for Americans.
Okay. Yeah, and shifting into gratitude is such a profound experience, because sometimes it is being grateful for breath, for life, for waking up, in the morning, just really simple little things that, kind of give you that, if you're climbing up this little rock mountain and you only have these little finger holds, it's stuff like that that does give you those just little places where you can say, okay, this one thing is okay. So now what can I do, or what can I notice that's better?
And you can even make a list when you are feeling more grateful for, and then, if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know, I'm not feeling much gratitude for anything, then you can go to that list and say it out loud.
Yeah.
And the other thing is music, like finding a song. With clients, I get them to have a song for themselves, a personal song for the year. And it's a really great shifter for people. But I'm very strict about what the song says. Words are important. It goes into our subconscious. And for example, there can be a little bit of rap, but not much. Studies have shown that that's not the best for our brain for that shift. And so looking at the words, and it's surprising how much of that victim stuff can be in the languaging. in songs. And, you know, sorry, country people, but a lot of the country, you know, music has that where it's the bad relationship or that kind of thing. And that's not what we want to focus on. We want to shift away from that. And so it's like, what can give me energy and still give me the words that are going to propel me forward into something that's positive.
Right. Definitely. Well, and like you said, it's what we consume that's important. So the words, the lyrics, the writing, everything that we're surrounding ourselves with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And even our own word usage. I do a free session for the meditation and healing course I teach, and people were asking me about language, and that's something we go into, because if we're using words that are against what we want, our brain is saying it's not congruent. So it's like the brain is looking for congruency. This is one of
Right.
those psychology terms where things kind of mesh. And so, for example, if I try to do something, if I try to lift my arm, am I going to lift it? Well, maybe, maybe not. Or you think about people who say, oh, I'll try
Well,
to make it to your
hopefully.
event. You know, they have that backdoor mentality, so they're not committed to it. So,
Uh,
what are you committed to? And if you do not want to commit to it, then the more honest we are with ourselves, the more of that internal congruency and integrity we're going to have with ourselves. So maybe it's like, let me get back to you, let me think about it, and being able to step back and say, you know, how would this help me, the other person? What is the reason I'm doing it for? What's the time commitment? Is that going to cause problems somewhere else in my life? Am I doing it just because I want to please that person? So in the Enneagram, we have one of the types that really feels the best way to connect with people is do things for them. So learning that that can be to their detriment because they're doing so much for other people, they don't understand what's important to them. So being able to be honest with ourselves and see that pattern. And the problem is we just repeat what's normal for us. And in times of stress, especially, we fall back into old patterns very, very easily. So we need to continue the practices, like the breath practices and all those ways of thinking, to make it more automatic and create those new neural pathways in our brain. So it's more and more automatic. And we just go there. We see it for what it is. Oh, there's my type playing out. I'm a type 6, and we have that anxiety, fear about uncertainty. So it's like, oh, I notice you again, just like our inner judge or whatever it is for us that's coming up. Just labeling it, breathing through it, doing something to ground ourselves and just say, yeah, that's not me anymore. I'm going to carry on and do the next thing that's important to me.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and you said for you in your own journey, learning to take care of yourself and putting yourself first was a really important part of that process, wasn't it?
It was. And if people are familiar with Louise Hay, she talks about different body parts and illnesses and the wisdom of the illness. And of course, the breast is all around nurturing. And I didn't have any nurturing growing up. So I didn't know what that was. So I was doing for everyone else. I was working full time, strata council, union work, and something had to give. And that was me and my health. So, you know, and everyone was surprised because I looked like the healthy one. I ran all the time. I ate well, you know, I drank the water, did all the different health things. And at the same time, I didn't have that downtime for rejuvenation and wasn't putting myself first. So that was my lesson out of the cancer. And that's why I teach the metaphysics course, which is all about self first and taking care of our own energy so that we can help people from a place of strength, just like the analogy with the oxygen mask, where if we don't put it on ourselves first, we're not going to be around to help anyone else. And
Right.
that's an ongoing lesson for people. And how do we shift that? Maybe before you went out for dinner with someone you really enjoyed having company with, and now it's a Zoom dinner. I'm going to do that with a friend tonight, where we have a dine out where different restaurants have specials, and they're doing a lot of, you can take it away and bring it home. So we're going to have a fun evening online having our dinner together, for example.
Nice. Yeah. And incorporating new things. And we're in a day and age where technology makes so much, it's just like I can call my mom in Arizona and it's this close to free, whereas before it would have been like just ridiculously expensive and I wouldn't have been able to see her and stuff. But really, kind of taking advantage of these technological advances, or being able to go to a restaurant, like you said, and even if you can't sit there, you can dine out, and it does help you, feel nurtured. It helps you feel like you're having a nice evening out, but you're actually in and you're with friends still.
And buying yourself flowers. We're coming up to Valentine's Day, and I know that's one of the things I loved. After dealing with the cancer, I did a retreat, which was amazing. And that really helped me to process a lot of things. And we had beautiful flowers in our room, and they made sure that they were kind of kept up to date over the week. And so for a couple of years after, I always bought myself flowers every week. And it's one of the things I love. And so I'm going to buy myself some flowers to show myself that I'm worth it. And it just brings some brightness into, here we are in Vancouver. Normally it's kind of gray in the winter. So, it just brings that uplifting thing that you like. And maybe for you, it's something else, a nice crystal or a nice candle or something like that.
I'm all like, all of the above. Thank you.
A nice bubble bath, there's lots of things that we can do. And that's another thing with the motivation for some people. It's like that, having those small perks. But I think really everyone, if we do that, because too often we think, when I get to that final goal, I'm going to have the celebration, but we need to do it all the way along. It's just like the gratitude, where we need to keep the brain interested, and that the hormones and different things that help us to feel better by doing that, and not waiting till the end to having that celebration.
Right. So making it about celebrating the path and not the goal destination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and that's so important too, because many of us, our goals are longer term goals, and we work towards them on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And so we can't necessarily discount all of the work that we're doing each and every day that helps.
And course correcting, I think that's one of the other things I find with people is like, I've made that goal. And is it an old goal? Is it still feeling right? Like, we need to, I like to have people every quarter look over, we're all buying online stuff. There's all these great deals right now, and personal development and all, maybe our business, whatever it is, and how much gets actually completed. So being able to say, this is what I'm going to focus on. That one's going to be put to the side. That's something I'll do in 6 months or whatever. And then it doesn't fit for me anymore either. There's that category. And I like to give people a forgiveness prayer, to just say, I forgive myself, I forgive the situation, and let it go. So that we don't have that stuck energy, because when we have a lot of things that are unfinished, we're constantly thinking about it in the back of our mind, and it's affecting our ability to achieve things in the moment. So the more that we can say, yeah, that just isn't feeling right for me anymore. Maybe I don't resonate with the teacher, or, it's a challenge for me because I need to do it in a group. And I think that's important. If we know that we need that support and we're buying something and there's support while we're doing it, can I fit that into my schedule so I get the support I need? Or if I'm really independent and it doesn't matter and I can just do it online and at my own pace, great. And so the more self-awareness, the more success we're going to have in all areas of our life. So it all becomes or starts with self-awareness.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that you said too, like sometimes we have to just admit, oh, okay, I started this and it's not the right path for me, and I really think that we're just in this place that's shifting too, and healers like yourself are helping people see like it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to check in with yourself and say, ooh, I thought I was going to like that, but I actually didn't like that. Or it's going to take me a lot longer than I actually anticipated it taking, because we're in the online sphere. There's like this 6 weeks until anything happens, 6 weeks to 10,000 followers, 6 weeks to $8 million, 6 weeks to, and you're just like, I'm on week 3. And, it's just like you said, celebrating the process as it unfolds for you, and giving yourself that space and acceptance to be able to do it at your own pace. And when it feels right and in the way that works for you is an amazing, acceptance of yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it gives us clues for ourselves to what's important. So what is it about the course that worked for you, didn't work for you? I'm finding there's a big shift to more people going more into their yin, because all yang follows yin. So it's like, how is this feeling? Is this feel incongruence? But not only that, there's like for women, sometimes there can be this feeling that I need to follow that person because they look like they're doing well. But is that really what I want? Do I want the 1 million followers? Am I actually not willing to push myself that much? Because it does take work and effort. And it's like, maybe that's not what's so important to me anymore. Maybe I need to have a bit more space so I'm not feeling so stressed out, because it's just too much pressure for me.
Right. Well, and it's also shifting the way that we see things, because is 1 million followers actually successful? Like, we're looking at what success is in a different way as well. And so having more time, being time rich, to me indicates a level of success that maybe 1 million followers is, if you got 1 million followers, but you're laying on the floor exhausted every day and you don't have any time to spend with your family, to me, that's not successful.
Exactly. Yeah. And not only that, it's like, that's true. I think a lot people are saying it's not so much the money. Usually it's time or money that we're attempting to get things that help us in those areas. And more it's time. We have so much more bombarding us. Tech changes are so fast. And it's like constantly having to relearn, which is good to a certain extent, but then there's overload. Like, where is the time to integrate the learning?
Yeah.
And actually use it in your life. And that's why I love giving practices to people, because it's like, no, that's just not what you do. So we do it once. It's like, how do I actually integrate that and see how it actually works in my life and make the adjustments that I need to do? And people were told that 21 days creates a habit. That was actually a very limited study with a surgeon, and it's actually 66 days or longer. So that's why it's so important. People forget about the maintenance part of working with someone. We have that initial part where we have all the awarenesses, then we start to bring in the practices, but it's that ongoing process where we need to keep that top of mind. And if you don't have a process for yourself, how are you going to incorporate that into your life?
That's interesting, because I know even when you're attuned to Reiki, it's the 21-day initial self-care ritual. And so, yeah, you think that, but it is true, because I do think too, like, well, I can do anything for 3 weeks, but in that, then I just drop it after the 3 weeks to tell you the honest to goodness truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a challenge I'm doing right now, which is really fun. The book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles from
Okay.
1910.
Uh-huh.
And he talked a lot about what we talk about in the law of attraction. And there's 4 chapters we're reading, and the challenge is for 90 days. And if you miss a day, you have to start back from day 1.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. And I really like it. I mean, you have to be aware that the time it was written, because he talks about men, right? And I mean, he uses woman, I think, once, but that was the kind of languaging then. And so you just kind of forgive the languaging. But it's all of the things, right? Where there has to be action, where thoughts create things in his way of wording it, and gratitude, a whole chapter on gratitude. And yeah, so it's been really fun. And yeah.
Yeah.
And so I read it every morning. I have a morning ritual. So I read that. And it's actually helping me getting back more into reading too, which I like, because, we spending so much time online. That's why I found one of the things I'd let go of too much. And so I'm getting back into just picking up a book, whether it's Kindle or actual paper. And so it's been fun to kind of reincorporate that into my life. And it just feels better to get off the type of screen where we're kind of going fast at everything we're looking at. Like the pace of it is so fast. So when we can kind of slow it down and actually incorporate it more, I'm finding that's really fun to do.
Yeah, yeah. That's the same thing. I mean, I used to listen to audiobooks when I would drive to Vienna or to a meeting or anything like that and get my reading in that way. But yeah, like I've been getting my Kindle out. I've been reading like books a lot more, starting the day like really being so much more and I can't think of the word right now, like conscious, and just being like, okay, today I'm going to start my day this way, and then I'm going to do this afterwards. And yeah, but definitely I'm going to have to go along with that book and start reading it again. So it's pretty fascinating. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and right now it just seems like the world is so hectic. Even, before COVID hit like a year ago, it was just like it almost seemed like something had to happen.
But that's why I find people are not giving themselves the rest. And it kind of goes back to the self care. Like they're doing back to back meetings instead of giving themselves 10, 15 minutes. Like all the science shows that if we don't take a respite at least every 90 minutes, we're not going to be that fresh. We're not going to be able to incorporate it. And I have a really amazing cranial sacral therapist. He's in his 80s and so knowledgeable about stuff. And he said, actually, I think it was the astronauts, but what they do is every hour they take a break, and it's like fresh air, some exercise, water. And so there's kind of a few things that they do in the training, and then they're good. And they can actually work longer. Not that we won't necessarily want to work longer, but there's more refreshing. And so you bring more to it, bring more presence. We're not wasting as much time when we're actually doing something because our mind starts to wander, or we have a need, we're a little bit dehydrated but haven't realized that, and we need to get the blood moving and different things. And, I shifted my routine with my morning walk now, well, especially with the darkness, but also because it's better for me now later in the day. And so I'm taking that respite time to get out, get some fresh air, listen to some music, and then I can, have another couple hours after that and feel really refreshed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed too. Like, I make a point, my husband and I take a walk together almost every day now. And that fresh air, change of scenery, not looking at a screen, is just for not, and for my mental health too, because I noticed like on the days when I don't do that, then I'm much easier frustrated. I have a less attention span, I'm less focused. So it's really helping me to be able to work better by working less or taking more breaks.
And actually, often you find that you're more tired at the end of the day, even though you feel like you haven't done as much necessarily, but we get tired. Our body is like, oh, I need to move.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and you just think about it too. Humans aren't meant to just sit and look at a screen all day. It's just not very good for anything.
Yeah, and we have more ability to shift up our eating too, right? We can, a lot of people are learning to cook that they never did.
Mhm.
So as long as we're not doing a lot of takeout, uh, we can actually eat healthier and earlier in the day, because I found that was what a lot of people were doing because they were so busy in the day and driving here and there and everywhere. They were eating quite late at night. And our body needs a certain number of hours to rest things like the liver and kidneys and all these different organs. So if we can kind of move up our eating time, that's really beneficial to us as well, because sleep is so important. And this is one of the things that we can do to make sure that our sleep improves.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Now, so you in your practice, you look at, everything from a person really holistically. So you're looking at eating and sleeping and socializing and um, early childhood experiences and shadow work and what a person is doing now, daily habits,
Yep.
things like that.
Yeah, we need to look at it all. And if we are looking at things in a narrow focus, what are we missing out on?
Mhm.
Is my way of looking at it. And because I've had a lot of varied interests and done a lot of different reading, part of my science requirements, I did nutrition, human foods and nutrition, and sports physiology in my psych degree. So that helps. And also part of the system I teach for the metaphysics, we have a separate meditation system for our physical body. So I did 11 years in that system as well. So it's just part of how I think. I think it's just become so much a part of, well, that's just normal for me. It may not be for other people, but that's kind of how I think now. And so it's like, okay. And plus, especially being able to read energy. So it's like, oh, well, this is, I'm noticing on your mental etheric or your physical body, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, and you can't help but just bring it back to the fact that it all is so intricately woven together that everything affects everything else. And then, even like, for example, my mom has always been big on like how food, influences different things. And so dietary, you know, and of course she taught us that
Mm-hmm.
as well as children, okay, do you need to keep food diary? What's going on? What's triggering what? And this and that and the other thing. But I think too, like, just the newer edition of mindfulness, or, it's an old practice, but I think in the Western world, it was kind of like up until recently not looked at seriously. It was kind of like woo woo kind of non thing. But now that they're really finding like brain synapses are recreating themselves
Mm-hmm.
based on the way that you're thinking and eating and feeling.
Yeah, and the thing is, the high end athletes knew this years ago. if you talk to high-end coaches that deal with sports, they did the kinesthetic where they felt it in their body. So they were actually rehearsing the success that they had. And this
Yeah.
is part of what we're learning now. And it is becoming more mainstream. And people who are really successful, they might not talk about the woo, and they're doing it. So it is more socially acceptable. I've been teaching the metaphysics course for over something like 12 years or something. And when we normally would have the wellness show and we would offer a free energy healing, people would kind of walk by us like, I'm not stopping there. And then the last probably 5 years, it's like they line up because they understand that we can do these things, that it doesn't have to be so challenging, so difficult to release some of this, that we can actually choose to let it go. And they're open. A lot of people are more now it's like, yeah, just get me the result. I don't care. I'm open to it all. And so it just makes it easier to have that conversation. And if people are open to it, then, all those different aspects. And really, when I think of mindfulness, I think of how am I present? Like, if we can simplify it, I think there's a lot of different things about mindfulness out there, and some are fairly basic, others go to other ways to look at it. So, and we don't always like the same thing. So if one thing doesn't work, check out another one. That's the other
Right.
thing I really encourage people, because we have different ways of looking at mindfulness. So how is it really bringing me present? How is it helping me? And maybe it's just not the right fit, so do something else. And it is a huge part, because we don't have a separate mind and body, right? We're all connected. So I think that's been part of the big gift, is all the science, everything shows us, yes, mind and body are connected, and spirit. So how do we keep all three of those really connected and into
Right.
our incorporating it all, and feeling and being in our physicality, and seeing how we can use the mind to move us forward, because the mind does not know what's different about this reality or what we put in our brain. Like you say, those neural synapses and all of those things. So if we can imagine it, we can move towards it.
Yeah. And that's exciting and profound in a variety of different ways, because, from thinking about how we can shift within ourselves and thinking about how we can shift the whole planet and the economy, or for example, or even how we're working nowadays, being more location independent, for example, being able to log in from wherever we are, not really needing to commute or go into an office, but also the implications about, yeah, working together, making strides forward, using, envisioning a different future, and then taking the steps to make that happen, instead of feeling like, oh, this is the trajectory that we're on, and so therefore we must head this direction because that's the way we've been going the whole time.
Yeah, and it is a matter of vibration. The more of us think this way, we shift that thinking, the vibration of the planet. And that's what's really exciting, because we are doing that. If you're into astrology and all of those things, that's what they're talking about. This is that shift that's going on. And so people are questioning all of those things. And we see the shift happening in a lot of different ways throughout the world. And it's just going to make us better stewards of our earth and of each other, and create a better life for everyone, right? When we bring everyone along and have that compassion for people who need that support, and supporting ourselves. So when we support each other, that's going to be the best that we can do.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I'm excited like you are because it is really interesting. And as we're shifting priorities, as we're shifting the way we work together, as we're shifting, like we were talking about earlier, what success actually means or how we can achieve what we want to in with the least negative impact on the rest of everything around. So taking that empathy, taking that sensitivity, and weaving that into our societies and our future vision and how we treat ourselves is the first step in that, really. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to embody it and live it in order to share it.
Yeah, it's like microcosm, macrocosm, right? What the
Mm-hmm.
world reflects back to us who we are. So if I'm having challenges with someone out there or something that's going on, how can I look at myself and what I'm doing? So if people are not treating me well, for example, what am I doing? How am I treating myself? What kind of love and connection do I need to have there? And I think this is a really important topic right now in our kind of month of love, right? So
Yeah.
we kind of talked about it briefly, but it's that place of how do I love myself more and really bring in that, because the more I do that, the more I'm going to express it and the more it's going to be out in the world and I'll have it reflected back to me.
Right. Well, and I think even love itself and the way we're looking at relationships and things like that um, is taking a huge shift because we're not, number one, we're opening up to non-binary, non-traditional relationship um, situations, and we're also telling women, giving women power to leave situations that weren't serving them or that were abusive, so this was something up until like the 70s and
Mhm.
even more recently, and even in some countries that's still happening, that a woman can't leave a relationship where she's being abused. But taking those things into consideration and allowing change, or not only allowing change, but encouraging and supporting change so that we're loving ourselves as human beings and we're saying, that's not love because I know love because I love myself. And when somebody treats me like that, I know it's not love.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was my experience with my mom. We left my dad and brother, I was 5, almost 6, and went back to her family, and they didn't speak English. So I never was able to communicate with them, but I was across the street and she attempted suicide again. And now I look back and think that was probably the conversation that they had, right? They're immigrant farmers, Depression era. And it's like, you go back to him. We're not going to support you
Yeah.
here. And she didn't see any other way out because she knew that the abuse would continue for her and possibly for me. So there was that place of not feeling like there was any choice at all.
Right. Right. I'm sorry you had to live through that. It's really,
Yeah, and I just feel grateful that I did get through it, and I was able to live with some cousins and an aunt and uncle. So I did get support for the year when she was in hospital. And even though it was challenging, I had people that, protected me. And there's a lot worse situations out there. Not that we need to compare, but at the same time, I just feel that gratitude for what I did have and how it helped me get through it.
right. Oh yeah, I can imagine. And as an adult, you've really worked to, well, after you got your breast cancer, then I think that was probably, you're just like, okay, this is a shift. This is telling me I have to change some things.
Yeah, and for me, it was bottling up all the emotions, right? I was very stoic. I was very withdrawn, shy, quiet because I've been bullied and all these other things. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time. I didn't have my space, all of those things. And then it was like, okay, I need to do an evaluation here. Is this how I want my life to be? And that's what I found. Even with all the psychology and everything, there was that spiritual component and dealing with the feelings. And so one of my lessons from there was, part of me felt like, oh, if I go into the feelings, I'll never get out of them. So I wanted to tell people that you do move through it and you can do it at your pace. So that's one of the things I'm very careful about with people, is making sure they can self-regulate and take care of themselves and go at whatever pace is important for them. So please don't feel pushed by anyone that you're working with. Like, go at your own pace. And if it's not feeling right, then be able to say no and find someone else to work with that feels appropriate for you and is willing to listen to you. And that was the biggest piece for me, was those two pieces, letting all of that come up. And it was sometimes as simple as watching a movie that was sad to help me to feel into that grief. And then all the other stuff came up. It's like, yes, the mom, kids I knew in high school that had committed suicide, all of those different things that I'd never really thought about, that had been stuck energetically, that I could now let out and see it from a different perspective, from more of a kindness to myself, how I wasn't able to express it, and knowing that was okay, and doing the forgiveness work and feeling that connection to my spirit, which helped me to feel supported and loved and know that I have access to that, because I never felt supported. So that was one of the big things for me. And also my Enneagram type, that's kind of one of our core things, is understanding what support is. And so that was a big shift for me to say, oh, I never got support because I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't know what it was at certain points. And so then having that awareness, yeah, I need to be clear about what do I need, and then I can ask for it.
Yeah, that's important to learn too. Yeah. Now, is your book available on Amazon, or
there's a bunch of different ones. I do have the one chapter for free on my website, and that is the kind of the condensed version of my story of the cancer and becoming a healer. So alifeofchoice.ca, and there's a couple different things on there.
Okay. All right. I put it in the notes. And if somebody wanted to work with you, would they just go to your website and fill out a questionnaire, or how would they do that?
They can go to the website, and there's a place to leave a message and a phone number, whichever one works for them, depending where they're at. And
Okay.
I'm on WhatsApp as well. So if it's another country or whatever, you can reach me through WhatsApp or email, whichever is best for you.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great that you're offering people that option to reach out as well, and giving them the free chapter of your book so that they can get a sample of your work. So, and I wanted to say thank you so very much for your time and taking the time to share with us so generously today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate all that you're doing to bring messages out and helping people with their business and their personal life, and bringing together all of that and supporting other businesses as well. Whatever you send out comes back. So wishing you lots of success.
Thank you. And I'm wishing you lots of success as well. This is my pleasure. I think that we're here to change the world, and the more people who get to see your message and share your vision and hear your voice and your story, the more lives you touch and change and shift, and the more shift we create together. So it's all, hopefully, knock on wood, like I said, seeing a better future and helping us all bring that future to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's Robyn McTague, correct?
Correct.
Oh, yay. Okay.
I get lots
And
of very interesting pronunciations.
yeah, I'm all like McTague, McTuga.
Or they think it's Q instead of G and all sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. So, okay, again, you can find Robyn's work at www.alifeofchoice.ca. And she's a master holistic healer. And she also has her special form of life coaching called A Life of Choice. And you can find her again at www.alifeofchoice.ca. My name is Sue Ellis-Saller, and I'm here from Spiritual Business Spotlight. Again, thank you, Robyn, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.